I wrote an article for the Naval Historical Foundation on Jacob Jones, neglected by history. And then I began digging back into the history of Jacob Jones, which then doubled me back into Lewes, where he grew up as a young boy during the Revolutionary War, which made me convinced that that's what got him to be a naval hero. But I never heard of Jacob Jones. He wasn't mentioned in our naval history textbook. So I started to dig in a little bit to Jacob Jones as a hero of the War of 1812, but nobody seemed to know where he came from. He just sort of emerged, as far as history books were concerned, in the middle of the War of 1812. He won the third battle in a sloop of war against a British sloop of war, which changed the whole scenario. Jacob Jones was born in March of 1768 in Smyrna. He was living there for 4 years before his mother died, Priscilla, and then his father, Jacob, quickly married a spinster woman by the name of Penelope Holt Coward. Penelope Holt Coward was the granddaughter of Rives Holt, the first Supreme Court judge of Delaware. Very soon after, Jacob Jones, the father, died. Both the mother and father apparently died of yellow fever, which was rife in central Kent County, central Sussex County at that time. Jacob Jones, the son, was left with a very mature, well-educated, and cultivated stepmother. He inherited 400 acres of land. He inherited a nice brick house, an orchard of 600 fruit trees, a lot of land which was converted to building timber for shipbuilding and other building, and a stone mill house which was operational and used, and a barn and other outbuildings. So he was a very well-to-do young man when he inherited. Now, since he was less than 14, Kent County appointed a young lawyer by the name of James Sykes Sr. to be his financial guardian until he could really inherit at age 21. James Sykes Sr. was a part of Jacob Jones' life for a long time after that. And James Sykes Jr., during that time, rose up to be a member of Continental Congress and one of the authors of the Delaware Constitution. But meanwhile, he was taking care of Jacob's finances. And when he had the estate assessed, he found that he could provide Penelope and Jacob with a income of about 33 pounds. And so that was a good income for them to live on. And they stayed there for 2 years until at age 6, Penelope brought Jacob to Lewes to live in the home of her grandmother, Catherine Holt, who was the wife of Rives Holt.
6-year-old boy coming from a farm in Kent County, Delaware, is coming to this burgeoning maritime port of Lewes. He has a prominent location right on 2nd Street where he is overseeing all of the town's mercantile interests, sailors coming and going, tavern activity. So he has a front row seat really to the drama that would unfold during the American Revolution.
Important in Jacob's life would be Front Street, where the pilots at that time and the maritime businessmen tied up their small boats, and a little boat building went on, which subsequently became of interest to Jacob. John Barry had, in my estimation, become a hero of Jacob when he was a young boy, because Barry's ship was in and out of Lewes, and Barry had a couple of exploits right there, right off of Lewes. He heard the name John Barry a lot, and so he was idealizing, I think, John Barry.
Traditionally, looking at Lewes, you're looking at a resort town, a vacation town. People want to immediately think of it as the town north of Rehoboth. But you're overlooking its key, strategic location at the mouth of the Delaware Bay, Delaware River, and really the gateway to the Atlantic. So Lewes became what it is because of its proximity to the sea. Lewes's prominence came with its pilots. So you want to navigate the Delaware River or out to the ocean, you need a local pilot who knows the shoals, knows the waters. It was a port of call on the way to Philadelphia or on the way to sea, but people came here to be reprovisioned. Ships dropped off cargo here. Any vessels that needed work could come here as well. It was one of the only safe anchorages between Norfolk, Virginia, and New York.
Another thing that shaped his boyhood, of course, was he lived under the threat of invasion or war right in his own neighborhood.
In 1775, Jacob would have first seen some of the early vessels of the U.S. Navy. The Black Prince or the Alfred under Captain Barry arrived in Lewes and seen the sailors walking down the street. And a year later, he would have witnessed the blockade that came with the British. So on the 25th of March, 1776, the HMS Roebuck under Snape Hammond arrived.
British parties from those ships came ashore to get supplies. There were skirmishes between the Continental forces and the militia, between the British Marines from those ships, hunting for food or consorting with the Tories who were supplying them with supplies. And there was always a fear that the British would land and one of these Tory uprisings or insurrections would occur at the same time, and Lewes was under the threat of occupation. The warning shot was a cannon. And almost on his 8th birthday, Jacob Jones heard the cannon announcing that the British fleet had arrived. So 1 month after he saw the American fleet, he saw the arrival of the British fleet.
This was a really onerous blockade that crippled the economy of Philadelphia, and he would have witnessed the repercussions of that firsthand and would have experienced pilots who lived in his town unable to perform their work and really go to sea. When
Jacob heard that cannon, he was in bed because it was at night, and he jumped out of bed, ran down the ladder to his mother and said, "What's going on? Why is a cannon?" And then another cannon. And his mother was hesitant about telling him that that was the British arriving, which they probably knew. But Gran didn't. Gran said, "Jacob, it's about time you knew the history of Lewes so that you are aware of where you are living, because this is a dangerous place. So let me tell you about what happened to Lewes in the past and what your step-grandfather had to do. He had to create a militia. He had to get a cannon down here." So that's how Jacob learned the history of Lewes. Now, another part of the inspiring youth of Jacob Jones was the Declaration of Independence. On the 20th of July, 1776, it was proclaimed to the citizens of Lewes in front of the courthouse, right next door to Jacob Jones' home. And since this was a peaceful celebration, undoubtedly Jacob Jones worked himself to the head of the crowd and heard the words freedom and liberty and the United Colonies and opposition to Parliament, and all those things formed in his young mind at just 8 years old. Most of Jacob's young life, there was a Continental Army company in Lewes or a militia. All of these things, both maritime and political, shaped Jacob Jones' boyhood.
With regards to Jacob Jones, I think it is a perfect backdrop for an American hero because it has a degree of Mayberry. There is a simplicity to it. There's a purity to it. It does take a village to raise an individual, to test their mettle. He had salt in his blood and wanted to go to sea, I think, because of his proximity to the ocean here in Lewes.